Soma was an orphaned young man who lived alone with his grandfather after losing his entire family. One day, his grandfather sat beside him and said, "My son, ever since your father and mother passed away, you have been living with me. Believe me, Soma, you are my entire family now. And I know I will not live much longer, so I do not want you to spend the rest of your life alone like I did. Try to build a family of your own, Soma." Soma listened carefully to his grandfather's words, and they deeply touched his heart. However, after some time had passed, his grandfather also passed away. Since that day, Soma continuously visited his grave while carrying an unbearable loneliness within him. Meanwhile, in another completely different world, one of the kingdoms was suffering from severe crises. Because of this, the people of the kingdom decided to summon a legendary hero to save them. Soon, the summoning ritual began inside the kingdom's sacred plaza, and an enormous surge of energy engulfed the entire area, while the summoning seal spread throughout every corner of the kingdom. At that exact moment, Soma was quietly sitting inside a library, studying as usual, when a dimensional gate suddenly appeared beneath him and dragged him into another world. He found himself suspended high in the sky as he screamed in panic, "What is this madness? What is happening to me?" Moments later, the magical seal began pulling him toward the kingdom, until he safely arrived at the summoning site. Soma slowly opened his eyes, completely unable to understand what had just happened, before the royal soldiers immediately escorted him to the royal hall. The moment he entered the hall, he witnessed a majestic sight beyond imagination. Suddenly, the king rose from his throne and began thanking Soma for answering their call for help and coming to save the kingdom. However, Soma stared at him in shock and shouted, "Have you lost your mind? What call? What help? Why was I even brought here in the first place?" The king was surprised by his reaction, yet calmly replied, "Please calm yourself, and I will explain everything." The king then began explaining that the continent of land had once been home to many different races, including humans, dwarves, elves, and even half-dragons, and all of them had lived together in complete peace. However, everything changed after a massive catastrophe occurred. Mysterious gates suddenly began appearing from nowhere, and countless monsters emerged from them, invading the continent and destroying everything in their path. Several kingdoms united and attempted to resist those monsters, but they ultimately failed to stop them. At the same time, the kingdoms suffered continuous attacks from monsters and demons until all of their resources were completely exhausted. Eventually, the monsters succeeded in occupying more than 1/3 of the continent and established a massive nation of their own, known as the Demon Lord Kingdom. Since then, the wars between the Demon Lord Kingdom and the remaining nations have continued without end. After hearing all of this, Soma spoke with frustration. "And what exactly do you expect me to do now? Do you want me to solve this entire disaster by myself?" At that moment, the Prime Minister stepped forward and said, "I will explain it briefly. There is a kingdom known as the Kingdom of Gran, and it is responsible for leading the war against the demon world. That kingdom is extremely powerful and constantly battles the demons, but it receives support from the nations that do not directly participate in the war. That support is absolutely necessary for the continuation of the battle." Soma replied indifferently, "Then continue paying them money. What is the problem?" The Prime Minister let out a sorrowful sigh before replying, "Unfortunately, our kingdom's economy has completely collapsed. In addition to that, the kingdom is suffering from a severe shortage of food and resources. We no longer possess enough to continue the war or even provide support. That is why we had no choice but to rely on the only solution mentioned within the kingdom's ancient records, summoning a hero and sending him to the Kingdom of Gran." Soma continued listening while remaining completely stunned before finally asking, "And what will happen to me after I go there?" The king answered him directly, "That depends entirely on your luck." At that moment, Soma realized he had fallen into a truly dangerous situation. He immediately began considering escape, but feared being captured and forcibly sent to the Kingdom of Gran. Suddenly, an idea crossed his mind, so he asked them, "If you send me to the Kingdom of Gran, will they stop demanding money from you?" The Prime Minister replied, "Of course not. As long as the war continues, they will continue demanding even more support." Soma then asked once again, "So does that mean you will continue summoning new heroes every few years and sending them there?" The Prime Minister shook his head and answered, "That is nearly impossible. The last time we successfully summoned a hero was 500 years ago, and currently we have no other solution." The moment he heard that, Soma immediately took advantage of the situation and said, "If this matter is truly that important, then how can you even consider throwing away the only hero you managed to summon so easily? The real solution is not sending a single person into war. The true solution is rebuilding the kingdom's economy. restoring its resources, and establishing a powerful army capable of protecting the kingdom from the surrounding dangers. Then he continued speaking with absolute confidence. True heroes are the ones capable of accomplishing that. But in reality, Soma was only saying all of this because he desperately wanted to save himself from being sent to fight against the demons within the kingdom of Gran. After a short while, Soma was sitting with his hand resting against his cheek while muttering in complete exhaustion, "Dear God, please save me from this disaster I got dragged into." Suddenly, Soma was shocked to find the king, the queen, and the prime minister sitting directly in front of him. At that moment, Soma requested that they explain everything related to the kingdom in full detail, and so they held a massive meeting that continued for 3 straight days, during which Soma managed to learn every detail about the kingdom's condition and all the crises it was suffering from. During those meetings, he began creating extremely intelligent plans to solve the nation's problems. After the meetings finally ended, Soma was completely exhausted as he stood inside the royal hall surrounded by endless piles of work and documents. Then, without any warning, the king suddenly announced his decision to abdicate the throne in favor of Soma, making him the new ruler of the kingdom. Soma froze in place from overwhelming shock and completely lost the ability to react. However, the surprises did not end there, because the king also announced Soma's engagement to his daughter, Lycia. Instantly, everyone inside the hall fell into complete disbelief, and the news spread throughout the entire kingdom before anyone could even understand what was happening. Meanwhile, on the other side, a young woman was riding her horse at full speed until she finally arrived at the royal palace. She immediately rushed inside and forcefully opened the doors while staring directly at her father and mother. That young woman was Princess Lycia, Soma's newly announced fiancée. Lycia angrily declared, "I heard that the throne was taken from you, so I came to return it to you myself." However, the king calmly replied, "There is nothing like that, my daughter. Calm yourself. I willingly handed the throne over to Soma because he is an extraordinary young man who surpasses me in governing the kingdom. In addition to that, he is highly intelligent and incredibly hardworking. And you should also remember that you are now engaged to him." Lycia became even more irritated and shouted, "How could you make such a decision without even asking for my opinion?" After saying that, she immediately left in order to meet Soma personally. The moment she opened the door, she was surprised to see a handsome young man sitting in the middle of enormous piles of documents, while working non-stop despite the overwhelming exhaustion visible on his face. At that moment, Soma looked at her and asked, "You there? Can you read and write?" She immediately answered in anger, "Of course I can. I am educated, and I am skilled in mathematics as well." Soma instantly replied, "Come over here and help me finish all this work." Lycia's anger intensified even further as she shouted, "Are you an idiot? I am Lycia, the king's daughter. I mean, the former king's daughter." But Soma casually responded, "Really? I thought you were one of the maids because of the clothes you are wearing." After that, he introduced himself by saying, "Anyway, I am the king now, so pull yourself together and help me finish all this work." Lycia stared at him in disbelief and said, "You truly are a rude person. After obtaining the throne, you also want to force me to work alongside you?" Soma let out a tired sigh before replying, "Honestly, I still do not understand what happened myself. I was only trying to survive and avoid being sent to the kingdom of Gran, but suddenly, your father handed me the throne and turned me into a king." Then Soma began explaining the entire story to her from the very beginning. He told her that after presenting several economic solutions to the king, he believed the most he would receive was a position such as Minister of Finance or something similar. However, he was completely shocked when he was suddenly appointed as the ruler of the entire kingdom. After hearing his explanation, Lycia became embarrassed and apologized. "I am sorry. I thought you were a fraud who stole the throne from my father, but it seems my father willingly handed the kingdom over to you himself." At that moment, Soma said to her, "As for the throne, I will try to repair the kingdom's condition first, and afterward I will step down from it. And regarding our engagement, you may cancel it right now if you want." But Lycia was shocked by his words and quickly replied, "What do you mean by canceling the engagement? Do I not appeal to you or something?" Then she continued speaking, "And where exactly are you planning to get the money needed to repair the kingdom? Do you think we possess some enormous fortune? We are barely surviving." Soma smiled confidently and said, "Do not worry about money. I have already found a solution." It turned out that Soma had begun selling some of the kingdom's royal jewels and using the resulting funds to repair and develop the country. Lycia was deeply shocked and said, "You are selling the royal treasures for money? How can you do something like that?" But Soma replied calmly, First of all, these treasures belong to the entire people. It is only natural that the citizens benefit from them instead of remaining exclusive to the royal family. Then he continued explaining, I have divided the kingdom's treasures into 3 categories. The first category contains historical treasures of cultural value tied to the kingdom's history. The second category includes treasures that have no real historical value. The third category consists of magical tools and ancient weapons. He added, I only sold treasures from the second category. They have no real use, yet they brought in a huge amount of money. Lycia then asked, and did you send the money to the kingdom of Gran or not? Soma replied, no, since they will eventually take the money anyway, I will postpone it until the very last possible moment. Soma was planning to completely change the kingdom's situation and save it from the poverty and collapse it was suffering from. Because of his sharp intelligence, he also began thinking about building a strong army capable of protecting the kingdom from any threat. His way of thinking gradually started to impress Lycia more and more. On the other side of the world, it became clear that this world was filled with dragons and mythical creatures, along with immense magical power within the kingdom. Returning to Soma, a man spoke to him and informed him that he must undergo a magical examination, as their legends state that a summoned hero possesses overwhelming magical power. Soma underwent the test and was confirmed to be capable of using magic, but he remained in a state of deep shock and uncertainty. Shortly afterward, Lycia arrived at Soma's location. She knocked on the door and entered, only to be shocked by what she saw. Soma had assigned 6 people to assist him in handling the kingdom's affairs. In addition, he was using his magical ability to manipulate feathers, enabling him to complete a far greater amount of work with speed and precision. It did not stop there. Soma was able to split his consciousness into each feather, meaning every feather had an independent awareness capable of performing tasks separately without exhausting him. Lycia stood in complete shock at what she was witnessing. It also became clear that Soma was doing all of this in order to track the kingdom's finances and determine where the money was going and whether any official was stealing from the people. Soma thought to himself, if I discover the one stealing the people's money, I will show no mercy and order the confiscation of all their property. As time passed, Soma did not move from his place. He continued working on the kingdom's tasks without stopping, but exhaustion was clearly visible on him, to the point that he could barely continue. When he finally raised his head, he noticed that everyone in the room had fallen asleep, including Lycia. He approached her to check on her, and suddenly Lycia woke up in panic, saying, I fell asleep against my will. Soma replied calmly, it's fine, there is no need to worry. In fact, you look beautiful when you are asleep. Lycia's face instantly turned bright red from embarrassment, and she was unable to respond. After that, Soma asked her to go out for a walk, because he wanted to discuss something important. They went out together and rode a horse for a short trip. However, Soma was terrified of riding horses, while Lycia said teasingly, what is wrong with you? You are a man. You should stay composed and ride the horse instead of me. Soma replied, I do not know how to ride horses. I only know how to ride motorcycles. I can even perform stunt tricks on them. Lycia looked at him in confusion, then asked about his family in his original world. Soma told her that he had lived only with his grandfather, but his grandfather had passed away, and since then he had been living alone. Lycia felt deeply saddened and said, I am sorry. I did not know your grandfather had passed away recently. But Soma replied calmly, it's fine. He was already an old man and lived his life as he wished, so there is no need to grieve for him. Soma then took Lycia to a vast field planted with large quantities of cotton crops. He said to her seriously, I want you to focus carefully on what I am about to say. These cultivated lands in front of you are not suitable for food consumption, and this is one of the main reasons behind malnutrition in the kingdom. He continued, before the demons invaded the northern part of the continent, the northern countries were responsible for cotton cultivation. However, due to wars and invasions, cotton production decreased significantly. As a result, some nations began growing it for trade and profit, abandoning the food crops they originally depended on. Soma added, over time, a famine spread across the entire kingdom because food became insufficient. At first, the kingdom sold cotton and imported food because cotton prices were extremely high. But eventually, prices collapsed after all kingdoms began cultivating it, so the kingdom could neither sell it nor import food. That is how the famine happened. When Lycia heard this, she felt deep sadness and said, how did we not notice this before? Soma replied, it's fine. What matters now is solving this problem. There are many things you still need to learn, because the day I leave will inevitably come, and before I go, I want to ensure the kingdom is safe in your hands. Licia was deeply affected by his words, yet at the same time, she did not want Soma to leave. After a short while, they went to the royal palace, where they sat together for lunch. During the meal, Soma began presenting his ideas to Licia regarding agricultural crops, and they started forming a plan aimed at achieving the kingdom's self-sufficiency. At that moment, Arx, the captain of the royal guard, joined them. He greeted them, sat down, and began asking Soma if there were any problems hindering governance or anything he could assist with. Soma replied, "Primarily, the biggest problem I face is the old officials, except for the prime minister, who is highly beneficial to the kingdom. As for the rest, they are utterly incompetent and must be replaced with more capable and trustworthy individuals. If they were successful, the kingdom would not have fallen into this level of collapse." Shortly afterward, Soma made a strange request to Licia. He said, "I heard that you have something similar to a live broadcast system, is that correct?" Licia replied, "Yes." It turned out that the kingdom possessed magical stones that transmit live broadcasts from the royal palace to all parts of the kingdom. Soma asked Licia to help him activate this system because he wanted to speak directly to the people. He also needed to recruit individuals for very specific roles. However, he made it clear that he would not rely on educational level as was done previously in the kingdom, but rather on talent alone. And so, Soma addressed the people of the kingdom saying, "I need people who truly love their homeland. No matter your talent, the kingdom needs you. There is no difference between rich and poor. Your ability determines your destiny." He continued, "The kingdom is going through extremely difficult times, and we need your help to overcome this crisis. Our people deserve a better life, and our children deserve our effort and sacrifice." He further encouraged them, saying, "Do not think your talent is worthless. This is my decision. I will organize many competitions, and the most talented among you will receive huge financial rewards. Anyone who believes they have talent should come to the palace. I will be waiting for you, and I will always remind you. It does not matter whether you are rich or poor, man or woman. What matters is that you are skilled in your work and can benefit the kingdom." Immediately after the speech ended, the people reacted with overwhelming enthusiasm, and excitement spread throughout the kingdom. Right after the broadcast, Soma looked highly optimistic, and as expected, many talented individuals decided to head to the royal palace to present their abilities to the new king. Then the scene shifted to another moment from the past, where Soma was speaking with Licia in the cotton field, telling her that she must learn everything so he could be assured the kingdom would remain safe under her rule after his departure. Suddenly, Licia woke up from her sleep, deeply moved by those words and fearful of the idea of his departure. A knock was heard at the door. A palace maid entered and informed her that Soma would be honoring the successful candidates of the examinations in front of the people today, and that Licia must attend. And so, the girl began preparing herself to attend the ceremony. After that, the scene shifted to the royal hall, where Soma was seated upon the throne of the kingdom, with a live broadcast of the award ceremony unfolding in a scene of great grandeur and intensity. The top 5 talented individuals of the kingdom were present, but it turned out that only 4 of them bowed in respect to the king, while one girl refused to bow. When the guards noticed this, they asked her to show respect to the king and greet him like the others. However, she firmly refused and stated that it was not the custom of her tribe's warriors to bow to anyone, regardless of status, except for the tribe's leader. The captain of the guard said to her, "What are you saying, girl? Do you understand what you are saying?" At that moment, Soma intervened and asked everyone to calm down and behave naturally. And so, everyone relaxed and adjusted themselves, and Soma began to examine their talents one by one. It was revealed that Asha belonged to the Dark Elves and came from the sacred forest. At that moment, Soma used his magical power and was able to learn everything about the Dark Elves through books. It was then discovered that Asha was one of the most talented warriors in the kingdom. Soma intended to grant her a large reward, but she refused and instead made a request. She told him that her homeland, the sacred forest, had suddenly been destroyed, and the plants and trees were no longer growing normally, which threatened her entire tribe. Therefore, she asked for his help to save them. Soma thought for a moment, then asked, "When was the last time the trees were pruned?" Asha replied in confusion, "What does pruning even mean?" Soma said, "Now I understand the problem." He then explained that pruning large trees allows sunlight to reach smaller plants, helping them grow properly, because tangled branches block light and damage the soil and growth of plants. He clarified that the main reason for the destruction of the sacred forest was the long neglect of pruning. When Asha heard this, she was deeply shocked. She immediately bowed and asked him to come with her to the sacred forest to teach her tribe the method of pruning and save the forest as quickly as possible. Then we moved to the second contestant, a girl named Jin, known as the most beautiful girl in the kingdom and gifted with the talent of singing. At that moment, Soma asked her to sing a song from his world. He then took out his mobile phone, a device completely unknown in this world. When Jin listened to the song, she focused deeply and then began to sing it with astonishing precision, which amazed everyone. They were captivated by her beautiful voice and applauded loudly, and the scene was truly magnificent. After that, we moved to the third talent, a young man named Shan. He was extremely nervous, and the moment he started, he fell flat on his face in a comical way. It was then discovered that his talent was eating. Yes, only eating. Shan had an enormous appetite, as if he could eat the entire kingdom itself. When Soma learned about his talent, he quickly approached him and shook his hand, saying that he needed his ability to save the kingdom. But Shan began crying and said that he had been bullied his entire life until he developed depression and lost about 4 kilograms. Soma began encouraging him, saying, "Believe me, Shan, you will be the reason the kingdom is saved." In truth, Soma was planning to use the live broadcast to showcase talents to the people, so that belief in individual abilities and self-confidence would spread throughout the kingdom. Then came the most important talent, a young man named Akra, who possessed extremely sharp intelligence, a steel-like memory, and exceptional thinking ability. Akra loved reading various fields, including science, politics, and history, and he was also an expert in military tactics. Soma offered him the position of managing the royal library, giving him access to rare and important books. Akra calmly said, "Very well, but allow me to propose something else, my lord. I want to use this knowledge to elevate your status globally and provide you with my expertise in all fields. In other words, I wish to become the royal advisor." Soma was surprised by his boldness and said, "If you believe you are worthy of this trust, then I may grant you the opportunity." But Akra immediately replied with confidence, "Someone like you would only give me this chance if you were already certain that I am capable of it." Soma paused slightly and said, "In any case, consider that after the ceremony, you will come to my office so we can continue this discussion in private." From there, it was later revealed that Akra would become the king's right hand in the future, and he would earn the title of the Black Prime Minister. Then the scene shifted to the final talent of the group, a girl named Tomi. She belonged to the woolly wolf race and possessed a very dangerous ability, the power to communicate with birds and animals. Soma used his magic, and through the books it was revealed that the woolly wolf race originated from beyond the kingdom's borders. At that moment, Tomi began calling out to the king, wanting to tell him something important. But she was extremely nervous and tense. Soma approached her calmly and said, "Speak, no one can hear us." And so Tomi began speaking, revealing a very dangerous secret to the king. In a highly sensitive situation, Soma then tried to calm things down and asked her if anyone else knew about this secret. She replied, "No one, only my mother." Soma sat back on his chair for a moment thinking, then said calmly in front of her, "Your request is denied, but I will try to help you." Then he ordered his assistant, saying, "Bring Tomi to my office after the ceremony ends." After that, he thanked the team for their presence in the royal palace, and the ceremony ended. The scene then moved to the royal office, where Tomi was sitting with Soma and his assistants. He asked whether anyone had heard what she said, and they replied that no one had. Her voice had not reached anyone at all. Soma said, "Good. Then no one heard anything, especially with the presence of the magic stones." Lycia said, "It seems serious." Soma, explain to us exactly what is happening. Soma began explaining, saying, "As you know, Tomi can communicate with animals." They replied, "Yes, we know that." But Soma shocked them by saying, "She doesn't only communicate with animals, she can also communicate with demons. She understands their language, and they understand hers as if she were one of them." Everyone was shocked and said, "Impossible! No one can understand the language of demons, and demons themselves cannot understand the languages of other races." Then Tomi began to tell what had happened. She said she had accidentally met a demon deep in the forest, and to her surprise, she understood his words, and he understood hers. He then told her to run away quickly before anyone arrived. Soma interrupted her, saying, "The ability to communicate with demons could completely change the balance of the war." Lycia said, "Do you mean you will negotiate with demons?" Soma replied, "Yes. But for now, all kingdoms are united against the demons, and the demon kingdom is considered an enemy that must be destroyed. If this secret is revealed, it may be used to join them and cause even greater destruction to the world. Therefore, it must remain a secret between us. At that moment, Tomi approached Licia, looking very worried about what might happen. Soma reassured her, saying, "We must protect Tomi at any cost." He suggested that the captain of the guard personally protect her, but the vice minister refused, saying this would only raise suspicion, and instead suggested she stay in the royal palace under its protection. Licia agreed enthusiastically, happy that she would live in the palace with her, and Soma also liked the idea. However, Tomi said she could not leave her family behind. Soma said, "Your family is welcome in the palace at any time." Then he asked the vice minister to find her a suitable job so as not to raise suspicion. Since she could communicate with animals, the vice minister suggested she work in the royal stables. Soma immediately agreed, and Tomi was very happy with it. After that, we moved to Soma and Licia, who were sitting and talking together. Suddenly, a maid came and informed them that Sean was waiting outside. As soon as Soma heard this, he took Licia and rushed to meet Sean. He greeted him, and it turned out that he had previously sent him on a mission that would benefit the entire kingdom, tasking him with gathering food resources from across the kingdom. Licia was completely confused, saying in surprise that all this commotion was just for a single food item, as if they were living in a world without purpose. Suddenly, we shift to a live broadcast inside the kingdom, where Jin and Sean are standing together as if they are hosting a program directed to the people. Soma then joins them in this program and begins interacting with the audience, revealing that the show is based on presenting types of food unknown to the kingdom's inhabitants. Soma had prepared a special table to display the dishes he cooks, while his team evaluates them and gives their opinions, which the entire population hears live. The presentation begins with the first dish, then Sean enters carrying an octopus, which initially makes everyone feel disgusted. However, Soma calmly takes the octopus and begins preparing it in a professional manner until he presents a special sushi dish. It is now time for tasting, and everyone is amazed by the delicious flavor, never expecting such high-quality food. The people watching the live broadcast are in shock and begin saying that they must try this food after previously refusing it. Then they move to the second item, a type of plant found in the forest. As usual, Soma explains the preparation method while his team tastes the food. Ashia appears to be extremely impressed by it, to the point that her tribe notices her reaction during the broadcast. After that, they reach the third item, a creature in this world known as slime. Its shape is strange, resembling a water-filled balloon, and if it bursts, its liquid disappears immediately. However, Shan has a different perspective and handles it in a professional way, processing it until it becomes ready for cooking, as slime liquid transforms over time into a flexible material that can be easily cut. Shan begins cooking the slime and presents it in an excellent way, and it is time for tasting again. At first, everyone shows hesitation. Soma even compares the dish to something from his world similar to instant noodles. After that, they ask Soma to taste it first, and he jokingly says that he was the one who brought the ingredients, then begins eating in front of them. Everyone starts eating with great enthusiasm, and it almost turns into a tasting competition. Thus, the royal food program for that day ends, and the people are extremely happy and engaged. After 1 week, Soma is sitting in his office. A maid enters and informs him that the vice minister is requesting to meet him in the royal hall. Soma is surprised and immediately goes to see what is happening, only to find the vice minister and Akra waiting for him. The vice minister informs him that he wishes to resign from his position. Soma asks in surprise for the reason, and the vice minister replies that the previous ruler abdicated the throne when he saw that Soma was better than him, and therefore he believes he does not deserve this position, and that Akra is more deserving of it, requesting acceptance of his resignation. Soma agrees to his words, but tells him that he will remain in his position until the resignation is officially submitted. The man replies, "Very well." Then Akra intervenes and says, "Since I am the future vice minister of the king, I advise you to take a day off today and rest a little, as since your arrival you have only been focused on work. This implies that a king should take at least 1 day off from time to time, so that those under his rule can also rest when needed, improving efficiency and comfort in work." Soma then leaves and goes to Licia, where he finds her training with Ashia in martial arts and swordsmanship. Soma is surprised that both of them are using magic in combat, and he realizes the immense power of both, to the point that if the training continues longer, they might destroy the entire area. At that moment, Soma calls them and sits with them, then tells them that they will disguise themselves and go out to tour the kingdom for leisure and relaxation. They disguise themselves in military academy uniforms and take a carriage toward one of the kingdom's cities. While leaving, Soma requests to be called only by his name and not as king until they return, so no one recognizes him. Ashia says she will call him ruler of the kingdom instead of king to avoid attention. Soma replies jokingly in frustration, "It's as if I'm talking to someone without a head. Focus a little." They then begin walking through the city for a while until Ashia feels hungry, so Soma suggests going to Jin's restaurant, and they head there immediately. Upon entering, Jin is shocked by their presence. Soma immediately says, "Do you remember me? I am the son of a silk merchant in the kingdom of Echino, and I hope you still remember me." Jin understands the situation and responds kindly, "Of course I remember you. How are you?" They all sit at a table and order the slime dish. Suddenly a girl is seen sitting at another table, raising her voice and speaking angrily to someone beside her, without anyone understanding what is happening. To clarify the context, this is the Kingdom of Frieden, currently ruled by Soma. Like any kingdom, it has a military force consisting of several branches. The land forces led by Lith, numbering around 40,000 soldiers. The naval forces led by Axel, exceeding 10,000 soldiers. And the air forces led by Castor, numbering about 1,000 soldiers. There are also special forces responsible for protecting the king and high-ranking officials, whose exact number is unknown. It is said that this kingdom was founded after the unification of multiple races including humans, beasts, and dragon-like beings. Humans were chosen to rule due to their large population at the time, while military commanders were selected from different races. Then we return to the restaurant where the girl is seen shouting, "Don't do that, Halbert!" At first, some assume she belongs to the woolly wolf race like Tomi, but it turns out she is from the fox race, not wolves. Lycia explains to Soma that Halbert comes from a prestigious noble family. He was a knight in the Magic Academy and later joined the military. As the conversation continues, it becomes clear that Halbert is planning to cause chaos within the kingdom and even intends to join the commander of the infantry forces to support a coup against the new king. However, Soma already has his own unresolved tensions with the infantry commander, and there is no trust between them. Meanwhile, the girl tries desperately to stop Halbert, warning him that the kingdom is going through a critical period, and any internal instability at this time could lead to its complete collapse and even open the door for an external invasion by enemies. We then shift to a flashback in the past, where Soma and Akra are sitting together studying the borders of the kingdom. Akra explains the nature of the surrounding nations, saying, "In principle, all countries on our borders have neither friendly relations nor hostility toward us, except for the kingdom of Andoni." Akra continues, explaining that Andoni constantly tries to stir conflict between the new king and the military commanders. It always requests sending reinforcements to the kingdom of Frieden, but these reinforcements are not what they seem. In reality, they are a method to allow their forces to infiltrate the kingdom's cities and gradually take control. He emphasizes that this kingdom is even more dangerous than the demon kingdom by many times. We return to the present, where Kaidi is trying to stop Halbert from opposing the king. Suddenly, their conversation is interrupted by Soma's arrival. Kaidi looks up in shock, while Soma calmly takes control of the situation and moves them into a private room before Halbert fully realizes what is happening. Kaidi is extremely worried, fearing that the king may have heard Halbert's words, but Soma reassures her, saying that there is no need to worry and nothing will happen. Suddenly, Halbert bursts out in anger, shouting at Soma, "Who are you to interfere in our matters?" Before he can raise his voice further, Kaidi grabs him and lifts him into the air with force, taking control of the situation. Soma then says calmly, "Let him go. He is not at your level." After a few moments, Halbert focuses his gaze on Soma's face and suddenly realizes that he is speaking directly to the king himself. Instantly, he becomes terrified and begins to tremble. Soma then asks him, "Why do you want to join Lith, even though you are trying to create more internal conflict?" Before Halbert can respond, Soma continues calmly, explaining that the king has the right to choose his commanders, just as commanders have the right to choose who follows them. He then explains that Kaidi is a mage within the special forces responsible for protecting the royal palace, and if Halbert joins an opposing faction, there may come a day when he is forced to face Kaidi in battle. At that point, there will be no turning back, even if he does not wish to fight her. Soma adds that Halbert must think rationally and not be influenced by others. His words clearly affect Halbert, causing him to reconsider his decision. After some time, Soma returns to the palace and is sitting with Lycia when he notices that his magical ability to move objects has developed significantly. Then a maid enters and informs him that the head of the Magna family, Halbert's father, has arrived with Kaidi and his son, and they are waiting outside. Soma goes out to receive them and immediately notices that Halbert appears to have already been severely disciplined. Halbert's father steps forward and apologizes to the king for his son's behavior. asking for forgiveness. Soma replies that there is no need for apologies, as he is not offended at all. The only issue is that the boy is simply too stubborn. The father then says he will personally discipline his son when they return home. While Halbert stands in a very uncomfortable position, Soma then turns to Kaidi and tells her that she will be promoted to the rank of officer in the royal palace. She is stunned and thanks him deeply. After that, he looks at Halbert and tells him that he will be transferred to work under her as her assistant in the royal palace. At that moment, Halbert becomes extremely happy and repeatedly thanks the king for the opportunity, his attitude completely shifting from tension to gratitude. Suddenly, Halbert's father tells Soma that he has a secret that he must know. He requests that it be spoken in private, as the matter is extremely serious. The royal hall is completely cleared, and Soma is left in silence, staring into space as he begins to deeply think about what he has just heard. It then becomes clear that in this world, magic is based on 6 elements: fire, water, earth, wind, light, and dark magic. The first 4 elements are used in combat, each possessing its own unique attacks and distinct power. Light magic is used for healing. However, the greatest problem is dark magic, which is considered a lethal force in every sense of the word and cannot be compared to any other type of magic. It is also mentioned that mages can transfer their magical power into the weapons they use, as seen with Licia and Ashia during their training. Military rank is determined by the type of magic a person possesses. Fire magic is assigned to the ground forces, wind magic to the air forces, water magic to the naval forces, while earth magic is assigned to the special forces, directly under the king's command. As for Soma himself, he uses a type of magic classified as black magic. Because of this, he decides to carry out a bold and dangerous experiment, focusing on the puppet he controls. He then sends it to join an adventurer party disguised as a human being. The puppet successfully joins the team, but the members are confused by the behavior of this new member. They explain their mission: to explore underground tunnels beneath the city. The adventure begins, and suddenly, a gigantic serpent appears before them. The party leader tries to prepare, but the puppet launches a fierce attack and kills the serpent within moments. The puppet continues advancing through the tunnels, eliminating every monster it encounters, without giving the team any chance to intervene, handling all combat on its own. As they proceed, one of the girls in the team senses something abnormal and warns the others to be careful. But soon, a terrifying giant salamander appears, a creature that possesses deadly acid, and conventional weapons are useless against it. The accompanying mage tries to use fire magic, but the party leader tells her that the salamander is unaffected by magic. Their only option is to escape. The team begins to retreat quickly, but the puppet stumbles and falls. The others try to rescue it. A flash bomb is thrown to confuse the beast, and one of the girls rushes to help, but the salamander attacks her with its acidic fluid and is about to hit her. However, the puppet intervenes and takes the attack instead. It then carries the girl and runs away from the area until all of them successfully escape the tunnel. We then return to Soma, where he is seen standing beside the puppet. Licia enters and asks what is happening, surprised that the puppet, which was small before, has now changed. Soma explains that it was indeed small, but he asked a craftsman to create a new one with the same specifications. At this moment, Licia asks whether this is the mysterious adventurer the kingdom has been talking about. Soma confirms this, saying that he is only conducting experiments and will explain later. The next day, the scene shifts to Soma in the royal hall, where all palace officials are gathered. Soma thanks them for their efforts over the past period, telling them that because of their work, a large amount of money has been collected, allowing the royal project to begin. It is then revealed that Soma's goal is to build a new coastal city that serves the entire kingdom, along with a road network connecting every region of the country to facilitate the transport of food and resources and reduce prices in support of the people. He adds that food prices in the kingdom are currently very high, and if transportation is improved and certain crops are processed into food more efficiently, the entire food crisis can be eliminated. The scene returns to the royal hall, where Soma considers his subordinates and decides to grant them a 5-day vacation in appreciation of their great efforts. Joy spreads among all officials. After that, Soma takes a short rest in his office. The next day, he takes Licia and Ashia and heads to the project site. There, he meets the captain of the royal guard and greets him. But the captain has prepared a new problem for Soma, then enters his tent and begins explaining everything in detail. He informs him that a tribe living near the project site refuses to allow construction under any circumstances. They rely on an ancient legend claiming that the land belongs to the lake beast, and that if anyone builds there, the beast will appear, flood the entire area, and destroy everything. At that moment, Soma quickly stands up and tells the captain that he wants to meet anyone from that tribe immediately. The captain replies that it is not far, and that he will take him to the tribe's leader. They set off together. Upon arrival, the tribe leader is in a furious state, angrily threatening the captain and demanding that he leave immediately. But Soma calmly intervenes, saying that they did not come to disturb him, but to learn the full truth about the lake beast. The leader angrily asks who he is. Soma replies that he is the new ruler of the kingdom. Upon hearing this, the leader is greatly shocked and then leads them inside his house. The chief began to explain the matter, pleading with them to stop construction in that area. He clarified that since ancient times, anyone who attempted to build there would be met by the lake monster, which would completely destroy the site. Since that time, no one had dared to approach the region. The old man was deeply emotional as he spoke, and tears streamed down his face. Soma then took out a map of the entire area and began pointing out the location of the lake monster zone. After that, they all returned to the palace to discuss the matter with Akra. But Akra said angrily, "What is this nonsense? Do you really believe this old man's words?" However, Soma replied that there was no literal lake monster, suggesting instead that such legends might be messages from ancient generations warning against building in that place. Soma then fell into deep thought and said that what was called the lake monster might actually be a tsunami. Akra then asked whether they would stop the project or not. Soma replied that the project would continue, but with some minor adjustments. He explained that the location was suitable for building a port, but the tsunami risk made it dangerous, so the port would be built in a safer location instead. He added that a tsunami is usually preceded by an earthquake, which would act as an early warning signal. If that happens, the coastal area must be evacuated immediately, and people move to higher ground. These measures would become part of the royal project plan. At that moment, Akra said that evacuation sites should always be prepared, along with roads that allow quick access to them. Everyone then began drafting a detailed plan for the royal project. During this, it became clear that Lycia had developed obvious feelings of admiration towards Soma. The scene then shifted to one of the construction sites, where workers were building new roads. Among them was Halbert, who looked extremely exhausted and close to collapsing from fatigue. Suddenly, Candy appeared and angrily asked him why he had stopped working. He tried to respond, but she scolded him harshly and ordered him to return to work immediately, stating that he was under her direct supervision and must obey orders without discussion. During break time, Halbert and Candy were sitting together eating when Soma suddenly appeared. Halbert immediately panicked and stood up to formally greet the king. But Soma told him that such formality was unnecessary and that he could speak normally and even call him by name, saying he considered him a friend. Soma then went to inspect the construction and road building work and was very pleased with the progress. He not only supervised but also taught them how to build roads using concrete materials. After that, they began installing streetlights along the roads and planting large numbers of trees brought from the sacred forest. These trees were revealed to be protective trees, emitting sound frequencies that frightened monsters and prevented them from approaching the area. This idea had been created by Aisha. Then a strange bird appeared overhead. No one recognized it at first, but it was revealed to be a messenger bird used to deliver letters, and it had come from the sacred forest carrying a message for Aisha. When she opened it, she was shocked. It was a letter from the chief of the Dark Wolf tribe, who was also her father. He wrote that a major disaster had occurred the previous day. A landslide accompanied by heavy rain had caused many deaths and left many others missing, with their fate still unknown. Aisha was deeply shaken and began to cry. Seeing this, Soma immediately began thinking of a solution and ordered Candy to gather everyone at once. They quickly prepared to set out to rescue the sacred forest. Soma then approached Aisha and comforted her, telling her that everything would be fine, but she must remain calm and that they needed to move immediately. Candy quickly gathered the soldiers. Soma also ordered Lycia to return to the royal palace and send rescue units equipped with all necessary weapons, and she immediately carried out the order. Soma then asked Aisha how long it would take to reach the forest. She replied that by horse, it would take at most half a day, but on foot, it would take at least 2 days. Soma became deeply worried, as many people would likely already be dead by then. They only had one horse available, the royal carriage horse. At that moment, Halbert said that there was no such thing as teleportation magic in this world. Soma became even more confused, but then noticed beasts used for transporting stones and construction materials. He considered this a solution and decided to use them to transport the soldiers. As a result, they were able to reach the sacred forest on the same day. The Dark Wolf tribe chief welcomed them and thanked Soma for answering the call for help and coming personally. Soma replied that gratitude could wait, as there were people who needed immediate rescue. He told him that he had brought all the soldiers, while additional rescue teams and supplies would arrive within 2 days. He then asked the chief to explain everything in detail. The chief explained that a mountain collapse had occurred during heavy rain in a forest area, causing many deaths and leaving many others missing. Soma ordered a list of missing persons to be prepared and insisted that they be searched for one by one. He also assigned a group to stay at the mountain peak to report any signs immediately. At that moment, Aisha said she would personally take the task and climb to the upper area. Soma then gathered the soldiers and explained the plan in detail, emphasizing extreme caution. Anyone who sensed danger was to retreat immediately. The search operation began, with Soma personally participating. Suddenly, he heard a sound from one of the collapsed areas. He rushed toward it and called out to Halbert, saying, "Come, dig with me quickly." Together, they managed to locate one of the missing people and safely transport them to a secure location. It then became clear that Soma had created a wooden mouse, controlled by his magic, using it to search through narrow spaces. By the end of the day, the entire search operation was successfully completed, and all the missing people from the incident were found. The tribe leader thanked them deeply, saying that without them, everyone would have been among the dead. Suddenly, Ashia arrived and informed Soma that relief convoys and aid supplies had reached them. Soma was overjoyed by the news and felt deep relief after the crisis had finally ended. On the other hand, the tribe leader's brother named Robert said that their presence was no longer meaningful at this time and would not change reality. Soma then explained that their presence would help the injured, shelters would be built for those who had lost their homes, and many tasks still needed to be completed inside the forest to ensure the safety of everyone there. Robert looked at Soma with deep sadness and said that the aid would not bring back the dead. At that moment, it was revealed that Robert's wife had died in the incident, and his daughter was also between life and death. Since the disaster, he had suffered a severe psychological shock and was in deep grief, crying bitterly over what had happened. After some time, the team withdrew from the forest after completing the rescue operations, but Soma remained in a state of severe distress. He said that he had been consumed by food problems and internal wars, and had neglected his duty as king and the kingdom's preparedness for any possible danger. He confirmed that he must establish rescue and aid teams across the entire kingdom, and that he would not allow anyone else to die during his reign, appearing deeply sorrowful. After that, Jin went to check on Soma, knocked on his room door, and entered. She found him still working, despite lying on the bed. She said she had heard that he had not slept much. He replied that although his body was exhausted, there were still matters that had to be completed first. Jin then sat beside him and asked him to rest. She gently placed her hand on his head and told him that he must rest, and that even if he did not want to show weakness in front of Lycia and the officials, she was by his side and fully aware of how exhausted he was. After that, Soma fell into a deep sleep while Jin stood beside him and continued singing in her beautiful voice. On another side, we moved to the 3 army commanders, who were holding a secret meeting planning a coup against the king. Castor, the commander of the naval forces, opposed the idea of the coup. Axel responded that they were in no need of internal conflict, as it would expose the kingdom to external invasion. She added that the kingdom of Andoni, which had supported the army's idea of a coup against the king, would undoubtedly send support to the king against them. Axel then looked at Lith and asked for his opinion. He said that he had decided the king was unfit to rule. Axel asked him for the reason, and Lith explained that the king had dismissed senior officials who had served the kingdom for decades, and that he had come from another world and did not know their history or customs. When Axel asked if he was doing this in order to take the throne, Lith replied that he would stage a coup against the new king, depose him, and return the throne to the previous ruler, restoring things to how they were. On another side, in the kingdom of Andonia, the king read a letter that had arrived from Lith, stating that he had requested reinforcements to participate in overthrowing the new king. As expected, the king did not hesitate and decided to exploit the situation by sending reinforcements under the pretext of support, while in reality planning to seize the kingdom. His son said that this was criminal thinking and that he was like a devil. The father calmly replied that this was excellent. On another side, Akra was with Soma in his office, explaining all the events taking place around them. They were also planning how to face the incoming threat at the kingdom's borders. However, Soma was thinking about the family he had built in this world and was deeply worried about them. We return again to the kingdom of Andonia, where the king gathered his forces and confirmed that he would attack the kingdom of Freedom, beginning to explain his plan to seize the kingdom from the south. Suddenly, someone interrupted the king and asked him not to engage in wars again, because starting a war now would cause the people to starve, and they would not be able to endure it. The king stepped down and kicked him in the face, saying that the forces of the kingdom of Freedom were growing stronger and their problems were gradually improving. So should they just let them become stronger than them? The man replied, "What is the problem if the kingdom of Freedom becomes strong in the end? In any case, we must unite against the demon kingdom." The king became furious and tried to kill him, but the king's son intervened and issued a decision to dismiss the minister from his position and expel him from the royal palace permanently. We return now to Soma, who was speaking with Lisha and told her that he had an appointment to meet the 3 army commanders. The meeting then began in a closed room, where Soma said that he knew this was the first time they had all gathered, and introduced himself as Soma, the new king of the kingdom, to whom the previous king had abdicated the throne. At the same time, the army commanders introduced themselves to Soma. Then suddenly Soma said, "That is enough for now. If you continue disobeying my orders, I will consider you traitors to the kingdom, and your fate will not be a good one." Axel then asked about his intentions toward the army commanders, and Soma replied that he had no bad intentions toward them. At this moment, an important fact becomes clear. The kingdom's army is currently scattered, with each division operating under its own commander, meaning the king does not have direct control over them. Because of this, Soma seeks to unify the entire military and place it under his direct command, while allowing the current commanders to retain their positions, but transferring full operational control to him. This proposal does not sit well with Kester, commander of the air forces, yet he still attempts to explain the scale of danger along the kingdom's borders. Soma then says, "Just listen. You have nothing to lose, and if you ever see any failure from me, hold me accountable. Even execute me if necessary." At these words, the commanders are shocked, especially Axel, who immediately declares her loyalty to the new king and supports his decision. However, Kester refuses to join, and instead asks Lycia what happened to her father, the former king. She replies that her father willingly abdicated the throne without any coercion, and when asked why, he said that Soma was more suitable to rule than he was. Despite this, Kester refuses to acknowledge Soma as king and considers everything that happened a rebellion, choosing instead to side with Leth in the coup. At that moment, Soma looks at Leth, commander of the ground forces, and says, "I won't even ask whether you are with me or against me. You are the source of all problems." After this, all parties agree that if a battle occurs, the defeat of a commander means the collapse of his forces, and the same applies to the king. They also agree that the battle will take place far away from civilians and innocents. Then Lycia calls out to Leth and suddenly cuts her hair, throwing it into the air, an act that serves as a declaration of the beginning of war. The meeting ends at that point. Afterwards, Soma speaks with Axel, feeling saddened that he was unable to convince Kester and Leth to join him. He is then surprised to find Jin with Axel, as she is also Axel's granddaughter. It is also revealed that Axel had already pledged her loyalty to Soma from the moment he ascended the throne. On another front, we move to the ruler of the kingdom of Andonia, who is seen gathering approximately 3,000 soldiers. He has decided to seize the Freedom Kingdom and take control of its resources, stating that by the time he arrives, the king and the army commanders will have already settled everything. However, Soma is not asleep or unaware. Both Soma and Akra fully understand what is happening. Surprisingly, they are not worried, as if everything is already under control. We then move to Governor Gora, who is seen at the borders of one of the cities of the Freedom Kingdom with his army. The city's mayor pleads with Gora not to attack, promising to surrender the city if given a chance to convince the soldiers to stand down, as more than 90% of the population prefers to fight to the death. But Gora threatens that he can wipe them out completely. His son then says that they should reach their royal objective without losses and avoid wasting soldiers in a meaningless war, as the city will fall eventually. Gora then tells the mayor that he guarantees the safety of the citizens if the city is surrendered without resistance. The mayor returns to his city in despair, attempting to convince the people to surrender. Elsewhere, we move to the major catastrophe, where a large group of Leth soldiers launches an attack on one of the kingdom's fortresses. A clear gap in power becomes evident between the two sides, as fire witches and archers surround the castle, unleashing a relentless barrage of attacks. The kingdom burns from within, while a flood engulfs its surroundings. In the midst of battle, Halbert uses his fire magic, moving at high speed and launching his spears toward the enemy below with overwhelming destructive force. Yet despite his bravery, the sheer number of enemies overwhelms the situation. Meanwhile, an enemy force equipped with 3 massive cannons begins firing at the castle walls, gradually causing them to collapse, placing the commanders in a critical situation. Suddenly, a figure appears moving at unbelievable speed across the battlefield, knocking down cannon shells before they reach the walls. It is revealed that he is a skilled hunter from the Dark Forest tribe, who had previously joined the kingdom's forces after being rescued in the forest. He demonstrates extraordinary ability in destroying the incoming projectiles with ease. The castle gates are then opened and a large group of the king's soldiers rush out to destroy the cannons before retreating back inside. They succeed, and the balance of the battle shifts completely. Reports then reach Leth informing him that the 3 cannons have been destroyed in an instant, causing him to rage and order a temporary retreat to reorganize his forces. On Gora's side, he is in a state of extreme anger and tension as the city gates have still not been opened. He orders his son to prepare the troops for battle. Suddenly, a shocking sound echoes from inside the city, a terrifying noise like a mass preparation for war. The city mayor then appears, running toward Gora and apologizing deeply for the delay, begging for forgiveness. Gora angrily responds, "You promised to surrender the city." The mayor explains that he was trying to convince the soldiers inside the city, and that the people prefer death over surrender. Gora's rage intensifies as he draws his sword, attempting to kill him. However, his son quickly intervenes, warning that fighting inside the city will lead to heavy losses, and could even cost them the war against the kingdom itself. The mayor then presents a bag of gold and requests a delay until the next day at noon, saying it will show the soldiers that Gora is a noble and wise king. Gora is impressed by the idea and grants the delay, on the condition that he will not be blamed later. Meanwhile, it is revealed that the city mayor is sitting with Axel, and that they were both buying time as part of the plan devised by Soma in order to win the war. On the next day, Leth's forces continued their assault on the fortress, while Candy and Halbert struggled to hold out for as long as possible. On the other side, at Gora's position, the deadline expired without the city opening its gates, and in a state of complete loss of patience, he ordered final preparations for battle. We return to Halbert, who is shocked when Dragon Knights suddenly appear above the fortress. He is struck with panic, believing that the end is near. Then we shift into a flashback to the past, where Kester is seen sitting in the dragon castle speaking with his assistant, stating that Soma is a just ruler and that they were wrong against him, but his pride prevents him from backing down from the decision of war. The servant informs him that the remaining Dragon Knights wish to join him, but he refuses and accepts only 100 knights, saying there is no choice but to fight with honor until the end. In the present, Kester's daughter arrives and informs him that Soma has reached the dragon castle with a massive warship. Indeed, Kester sees giant beasts pulling the ship toward the castle, while Soma has equipped it with wheels so it can move across land and sea simultaneously. A communication then arrives from Soma through the stone tablets, saying to Kester, "I am sorry, my friend. I did not have enough soldiers, and I could not enter your territory directly, so I had no choice but to use this ship." After that, gunfire begins striking the dragon castle, and Kester laughs, saying to Soma, "It seems you are extremely intelligent. I have already begun to respect you, O king." When Soma offers him surrender and asks him to join, Kester replies, "No, not to that extent. I prefer to die with honor rather than surrender the castle so easily." The communication is suddenly cut, and flames begin destroying the castle where Kester stands. Meanwhile, Kester issues an order to mobilize the troops and destroy the city immediately, and the attack is carried out. However, as the forces approach the ship, they are met with anti-cannons firing volleys of destructive arrows, forcing them to maneuver and evade. They then decide to fly at extremely low altitude to target the ship's wheels, and they succeed, but the anti-cannons continue their attacks, which the Dragon Knights evade with great skill. They launch a direct assault on the ship and completely destroy parts of it. But the shocking discovery is that there is no one inside. It is completely empty except for a doll. It becomes clear that Soma had prepared a perfect trap. At that moment, Carly becomes extremely worried about her father, and orders are issued for the Dragon Knights to immediately return to the castle. Meanwhile, inside the Dragon Castle, Soma manages to infiltrate it and stands face to face with Kester, who is astonished by Soma's cunning. Kester then draws his sword to confront him. At that moment, Ashia stands in front of Kester, and the battle between them begins. Kester attacks in rage, but receives a powerful blow that sends him crashing into the wall. He attempts to attack again, but Ashia easily blocks his strike. Licia also joins the battle using her magic and lands a direct hit. Ashia then delivers a decisive blow that nearly ends the fight, causing Kester to fall to the ground unable to move, admitting defeat. He then asks Licia whether Soma is truly a good ruler. She replies that she believes he is better than any ruler of the kingdom, and that she would stand by him even if her own father were his enemy. She then brings a strange collar and places it on him. It is revealed that this collar is used for slaves and prisoners of war, identifying their first master, and if the slave considers harming the master, he is instantly eliminated. At that moment, Carly arrives at the castle, breaks through a window, and rushes inside, shocked to see her father in that condition. She is filled with a desire for revenge for him, but Kester tells her that the battle is over, and that he has already lost. Carly then surrenders, and Ashia places a collar on her as well. Meanwhile, Pullman is appointed commander of the air forces and ordered to gather the knights and move toward Leth's location. Returning to Halbert, he panics upon seeing the dragon knights and assumes the fortress will fall. But the situation quickly turns in their favor, and he is relieved when he realizes that Soma has successfully taken control of the dragon castle. Soma then arrives at the fortress and greets Halbert, saying he has brought him the air weapon as promised. Halbert replies that they held out as planned. Soma jokes that it was only a day and a half, but Halbert explodes in anger, cursing him and saying they were under constant cannon fire, and the situation was far from simple. Candy is shocked by Halbert's boldness in speaking to the king, and Carly is also surprised, while Licia explains that the king considers him a close friend and treats him like family, allowing him that level of freedom. On the other side, Leth is in a meeting with high-ranking officials who had previously been dismissed by Soma, and they are in a state of extreme fear, especially after Soma's control over the air forces and the shift in the balance of power within the kingdom. At that moment, Leth realizes he has completely lost the battle and decides to surrender without resistance. However, one of the corrupt officials suggests using the people as human shields to escape. Leth becomes enraged and says, "I was certain you had no principles." In an instant, slave collars are placed on the officials, and even Leth himself is collared. After that, Leth orders the surrender of the fortress to Soma, instructing the soldiers to raise white flags above the castle, signaling surrender, although Soma and his team are not fully aware of all the internal details. Soma then heads toward the west of the kingdom after taking control of Leth's army, bringing Carly with him. Carly asks him to explain everything in detail, so Soma begins explaining the situation to her, and the narration shifts into a flashback. In the flashback, Halbert's father is seen in Soma's palace requesting to reveal a serious secret. He explains that Leth has carried out a rebellion aimed at gathering all traitors and corrupt individuals into one faction. Because of this, Leth decided to wage war against Soma, as it was the only way to gather all criminals under his control. At that moment, Soma understands the true situation and therefore decides to follow his plan until the very end. And on the other side, Gora stood at the borders of the city, fully determined to erase it from existence. However, he was suddenly shocked by the appearance of Oxel standing on the city walls. He was deeply stunned and questioned in his mind how she had arrived there, especially since she was supposed to be on the battlefield with Lith and Castor. Suddenly, Oxel used her magic to form a massive water mirror and broadcasted a live transmission of Suma directly in front of Gora, and the broadcast spread across every corner of the kingdom. Suma began his broadcast, stating that he had taken control of the army and the air forces after defeating the commanders, and that all military power was now under his command, meaning that internal wars had completely ended. He then explained to the people that the kingdom of Andonia had exploited the state of instability within the kingdom and gathered an army led by Gora, planning to invade their lands, and therefore he officially declared war on them. Then he directly addressed Gora, saying that he would teach him a lesson, and threatening that he would erase the history of his kingdom from all books, and leave no trace of it behind. At that moment, Gora was trembling with fear, while his forces quickly began retreating back toward the kingdom. In the kingdom of Andonia, the Minister of Finance rushed to Gora's daughter carrying urgent news, informing her that her father and his forces had fallen into an ambush during their return. She immediately realized that her father must have taken the Golden Valley route, the expected path of return, and indeed, the battle began there, where strikes rained down from the sky, and the scent of death spread everywhere. More than half of Gora's army was wiped out by Jin, who was leading the operation, until the death toll exceeded 15,000 soldiers, becoming the fallen in a catastrophic scene. On the following day, Gora managed to escape with the remaining soldiers and reached the borders of the city of Fan, the capital of the kingdom, relieved that it had not fallen. However, Suma was waiting for him, having set up a camp in the middle of the route and prepared an uncountable number of soldiers. Once he confirmed Gora's arrival, he gave the signal for a direct attack. Thus, the final battle began, a brutal and devastating clash between both armies. At the same time, Candy was using her magic with great skill, while Halbert was using fire magic and eliminating soldiers with ease. In the rear, Suma was sitting and observing what was happening, while Carly asked him why he was on the battlefield instead of a safe place. He replied that the lives of his soldiers were no less valuable than his own, and if they failed, he must share the same fate. Carly was shocked and asked if he was not afraid of death. He answered that he was afraid, but at the same time, he feared for the family he had built and for the lives of every soldier fighting with him. On the other side, we return to Gora, who was watching the battle from a high position. At that moment, he spoke with his son, saying that the battle was not going in their favor, and ordered him to withdraw the soldiers and leave immediately. But the son was shocked and said, "I will not leave you alone." However, the father replied that this was his mistake because his soldiers were already exhausted from what happened in the valley, yet he dragged them into another battle. The son insisted that he must retreat with him because he did not want to leave him. At that moment, Gora realized that Soma would not leave him alone if he retreated with the army, but would instead pursue them and prevent their escape. In the end, the son obeyed and fled with the soldiers. As for Gora, he charged directly toward Suma's camp to eliminate him immediately. At that moment, news reached Suma that Gora was heading toward the camp with 500 soldiers. Suma realized that this was the end. He ordered Carly to go immediately to Lycia, stay by her side at all times, and never leave her. And if he died in this battle, she must tell her that he had abdicated the throne in her favor. Suma said this because he was completely away from his army and had no one to protect him. However, Carly refused, saying she could never leave him and that it would not be honorable to flee and abandon the king of the kingdom, even if it cost her her life. Then she rushed directly toward Gora. The battle between them began violently, and Carly was about to fall, but Suma's puppet intervened at the right moment to protect her. Gora was extremely enraged and looked at Suma saying, "I will eliminate you." Then he charged forward, but the puppet stopped him and held him back. Suma then ordered Carly to detonate the puppet, and she did so, causing a massive explosion that shook the entire area. At first, everyone thought Gora had died, but the surprise was that he was still alive. He rose and walked towards Suma, saying, "Prepare to die." Suddenly, a heavy barrage of arrows rained down on him, striking him completely. Gora tried to resist and threw his sword towards Suma, but it missed. In the end, Gora fell to the ground and died before their eyes, and with his death, the war finally ended. Thus, Suma took control of the city of Fan, the capital of the kingdom of Andonia. When Gora's daughter received the news, she was deeply saddened and said that her father had lived greedily and died foolishly. Then she left the place. Soma then returned to listening to the report on the latest developments and declared that he would not take control of any territory within the kingdom except the capital, and that he would not engage in any further wars from this point onward. However, Lycia told him that this was an opportunity to seize control of the entire kingdom's lands, so why not take advantage of it? But Soma had a different view. He explained to her that the kingdom of Andonia is part of a joint alliance formed to confront the demon kingdom, and this alliance is led by the Grand Empire. If a war breaks out, all parties will intervene, so they must first reach proper negotiations with them. He added that even if Andonia was the one that started the war, it is still part of the alliance, unlike them who are not part of it at all. Then we move to the Grand Empire, where we learn that the ruler is a princess named Maria, a very kind princess who does not discriminate between the people, and everyone loves her. At that time, her sister, Princess Sira, was speaking with her and told her that she had prepared a large army and would head to the kingdom of Andonia to resolve the conflict there. Princess Maria told her to keep in mind that the kingdom of Andonia was the one that started the war, but she should still try to negotiate with the new king and ensure her own safety. On the other side, we move to the kingdom of Andonia, where we see the people living their daily lives normally as if nothing had happened. Suddenly, the daughter of Gora appears and tells the Minister of Finance that the people are happy because they have regained what was taken from them, meaning their freedom. Her father used to control and restrict the people, while Soma gave them freedom and even allowed a degree of prosperity. Meanwhile, Akra arrives and informs Soma of very important news. 50,000 soldiers from the Grand Empire have begun moving toward the Kingdom of Andonia, and they are expected to arrive within a short time. Another party has already reached the kingdom earlier to report the arrival of the Imperial Army. Soma simply says, "Very well, inform me if anything new happens." Then we move to Soma, who once again disguises himself and goes out walking with Jin to spend some enjoyable time together. Soma enters a shop and begins buying many things for Tomi, as he considers her his little sister, and he buys her a lot of clothes. The girl is extremely happy. When she comes out, Soma calls her and says, "I also bought you these shoes. I hope you like them." She runs toward him happily and excitedly. At that moment, Soma gives Jin a hairpin as a gift, and she becomes very happy as well. She tells him, "You didn't forget about Lycia and Ashia too, did you, Soma?" He replies, "Don't worry, I brought gifts for all of them." They continue their day of leisure, sitting and eating in a quiet place. However, this calm does not last long, as Sira arrives at Soma's location and begins speaking to him in a harsh tone. Jin becomes angry and prepares to attack her, but Sira clarifies that she is not here to fight. She has come on an official mission from her sister, Princess Maria, ruler of the Grand Empire, to investigate the rumors about Soma, accusing him of plundering the Kingdom of Andonia and bringing it to the brink of bankruptcy, as well as feeding the people in inhumane ways and imprisoning and torturing the kingdom's women. Soma is shocked by these accusations and says, "I did not do that." Sira then notices that Jin speaks to Soma very casually and calls him by his name, and she concludes that this indicates stability in the kingdom and that he is a good person. She begins to get to know him better and tells him that she will leave for now, and a later meeting will be arranged to reach a solution that satisfies all parties. When Sira learns that Soma comes from another world, she bows in respect, especially after discovering that the Kingdom of Freedon was the one that summoned him. They agree to set a later meeting date. After that, Soma returns to the palace, where Tomi is very happy with her new clothes and shows them to Lycia. Soma then gives Ashia her gift, and she becomes very happy. As for Lycia, she feels a bit sad because she did not receive anything, but suddenly Soma presents her with a beautiful necklace and says, "I could never forget you, my friend." She becomes extremely happy. At that moment, Soma makes an eternal inner vow. He will do everything in his power to protect Lycia and make her happy forever, preserve this family he has built, and never allow any danger to reach them. He also says he awaits the day he completely eradicates corruption and brings true peace to all people. And thus, the first part of our anime comes to an end. If you enjoyed Soma's story and want a second part, write in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more. See you in a new video.